everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom or Tom. How's it going?
Tony, we are getting some shows done today, and then I am off to take my son to go play pond hockey on a real life pond, which is always a lot of fun, but also at my age, there's like a 12% chance this ends up with me in traction, which is always an exciting way to live.
Is that a normal thing? They do a lot of the pond hockey? Or is that like a special type of deal?
It is something we only get to do it every few years because and this is not, like he plays for an actual team. This is just someone on his team has a pond, and it has been cold enough that it has actually frozen over, which only happens every few years, but it's always fun when we get to do it. So looking forward to it, but also kind of going, I've got to remember to put on a cup before I put on all the other layers. That's there's a lot of planning that goes into this, Tony, more than you would think.
For sure, more than I would think. So there you go, Tom. That'll do it from here. Just a Pond Hockey Weekly update for you there.
Quite possibly the last ever episode of the Buckeye Weekly Podcast.
So we are here to continue our series on looking at what impact the incoming transfers will have. Today we'll be talking about Alabama defensive tackle James Smith, who is now Ohio State defensive tackle James Smith, and what he could bring to the Buckeyes this year. And Tom, first thing that's interesting to me is he likely projects as a 3-tech, right? Which is where Ohio State also has Edric Houston, who closed the season pretty darn well this past year, and as a sophomore, and looks like the future of the position. But together, this could be something I think special. And also, it'll be interesting to see at some point if they play alongside each other in this defense. But when you look at Edric Houston, okay, and I'll just start with him. 21 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 3 sacks last year. Of those numbers, all of the tackles for loss, all of the sacks, and 15 of the 21 tackles happened over the second half of the season when he started to get even more comfortable. So if you can project like Edric Houston's second half of the season and what James Smith did throughout his season as at Alabama last year, which was 28 tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, starting I think 11 of their 15, 12 of their 15 games. To me, you're looking at what could be a nonstop power at 3-tech with the two of them.
Yeah, I mean, if you sort of project the back half of Houston's season over the course of the whole season, and then you take James Smith's numbers and just say, just do that. You're not asking him to do anything else. Just do that. And, playing in a comparable league in the SEC, obviously hasn't had the postseason success that the Big Ten has. But overall, I mean, it's not it's not a total jump up from the minor leagues. So I think if you look at those numbers and you just say 30 tackles, 6 to 7, 8 tackles for loss, sack or 2 for each of those guys, put that together, that's a really, really dominating 3-tech position. You're talking 60 tackles, 12 to 14 tackles for loss, handful of sacks. You would, from an interior defensive line spot, I think you would take that with a big smile on your face. And that's one of those things where, because of the way they're going to rotate, and assuming they are going to rotate these guys more or less 50-50, that's not necessarily going to turn into one of these guys as a first-team All-American. But sort of on the whole, in the aggregate, you can end up with All-American level production there between the two of them.
Yeah, you could see between the two of them double-digit tackles for loss, double-digit, sacks perhaps, and just a level of production and, no let up, I guess, is what I would say. And I think this past year they got pretty good play out of Tywone Malone and Edric Houston, but certainly could have been better. And I think that's the expectation this year, is Edric Houston is a year better. James Smith comes in now with double-digit starts in his career in high-level college football. And I think you could see, like I said, double-digit tackles for loss between the two, and double-digit sacks, and just a good amount of impact defensively. And looking last year, Edric Houston and Tywan Malone split the snaps relatively evenly over the course of the season. Down the stretch, I was looking over the last 4 games. Edric Houston had 136 snaps. Tywan Malone had 83, but the bulk of the difference there was the championship game, or the game against Miami, which was 50-12 for Edric Houston in snaps for Tywan Malone. I'm not expecting that sort of thing. I'm thinking 65 snaps. There's an opportunity over the course of a game for each of these guys to get like 28 and be extremely fresh. When we've talked with Larry Johnson in the past, he's always been like, I don't want to overextend my guys. Sometimes he has to because the drop off between spots is too much. I don't know that there's going to be enough of a drop off here either way for them not to remain fresh and just constantly churning. So I think this could be a real strength for the Buckeyes, adding James Smith to a position that isn't a weakness, but wasn't deep until now. And when we talk about deep, we've got we're talking about 2 guys now, but 2 starter level guys that, as long as they remain healthy, could be one of the strengths of the Ohio State defense.
Yeah, I think this is kind of a different conversation than when we did the show on nose tackle and replacing Caden McDonald. And because there you're losing the guy who was the first team All-American. Here you're losing Tywan Malone, who was, kind of an even split, but you saw, as you said, the amount of snaps kind of tail off. I don't think it's going to be a huge ask for James Smith to come in and be at least Tywan Malone good. At least. I think that would be maybe my base level expectation for what he might be this year. That's a 25th percentile outcome, I think. You can potentially get a lot more than that. And then Edric Houston, you would assume, obviously he was, in case you're forgetting why he probably was not playing as much at the beginning of the season, he had that knee injury on the first day of fall camp and missed a bunch of time. If he's healthy this year, that in and of itself, on top of another year of experience, another year of, in the weight room, all that kind of stuff, that should lead to a better Edric Houston than you had last year. And then if the absolute baseline for James Smith is being a Tywan Malone player, you're going to get what you got last year at the absolute worst, with the potential upside of, hey, could be substantially better, could be able to split snaps more evenly than they did in the Cotton Bowl, all of which is to the benefit of both of these guys and the defense on the whole.
And like I said earlier, I will be interested to see if they play on the same line together. If Edric Houston is maybe sometimes a strong side defensive end type of thing, and because generally in this 5-man penny front, you've got a nose tackle, like a zero tech right over the center, and then you've got 2 3-techs. But last year, one of those 3-techs in that alignment is Kenyatta Jackson. I wonder if this year there will be actually at times 2 legitimate 3-techs in that defense. And then you've got your ends on the outside of those guys, and to give them, perhaps a better run stopping defense. Not that they were bad last year by any means, but I do think it gives them some more versatility up front and can do some different things. And if they both warrant playing, then you're going to want to play them. But Larry Johnson's also going to want to keep them fresh. And Tywan Malone last year, 26 tackles. All of them, none of them behind the line of scrimmage. And I think that's where you'll see the difference this year between James Smith and Edric Houston and Tywan Malone and Edric Houston is they'll be getting into the backfield more than they did last year. And Edric Houston, 4 tackles for loss. I expect that number to go up. And James Smith, even if he just does what he did last year, I think he'll do more. But together, again, should be formidable. Say expectations for James Smith. I'll throw it right down here, Tom. Go ahead and put this in ink. Let's say 36 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, and I'll say I'm going to go even 3 sacks.
I think those are realistic numbers. I think those are attainable numbers, and I don't think that's the ceiling for him, but I don't, that's also not like a worst case scenario. I think that's a good 50th percentile outcome for him, where that's about what I would say I'm expecting, something right about in that range. And if they get that, I think that is plenty good enough for, if he's healthy and Edric Houston is healthy, and they're getting that out of him, and they're getting what I would, expect out of Edric Houston based on what we've seen so far. I think that is plenty good, where that three tech position is better in 2026 than it was in 2025, and that's not something you're going to be able to say at a ton of places on the defense.
Yeah, I would agree with that. A step up for sure. So there you go. Some thoughts on what Tom is expecting from James Smith, and some of what I'm expecting as well. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit that thumbs up. We'd appreciate it. Listening, a 5-star rating and review is always appreciated as well. And of course, you can continue to find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com talking about this and everything else Ohio State related. So thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you all later.